Good morning.
That's right. It's even morning for me.
Yeah, we've crossed from Thursday into Friday. Well, hello everybody. Welcome. We didn't talk about who was going to bring us in, so I'll just do it.
No,
Welcome to
I had this moment and I'm like, okay, whoever speaks first, that's just going to be that person.
is
And
going
Dominic,
with
you started speaking, so I'm like, okay, cool, we got this.
boom. Here we are. Well, good morning. Welcome to our Bad Batch finale instant reaction. So instant that I can't even remember what the title of the episode was.
I think it was Camino Lost.
Camino Lost. Yeah, the finale part 2, and a fairly character based episode. Really
Yeah,
focusing in
extremely.
on the Bad Batch, and if it wasn't for that little post credit scene, or not even post credit scene, just final scene at the end,
Yeah.
it really didn't explore the larger picture of the galaxy. Not, which is, I'll be honest, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think from a finale, especially part 2 of a finale, you want to focus in on the characters and really dive into it. But yeah, lots to get into here this morning for this instant reaction. We will be taking live calls if you want to. There's a link there to join up in the StreamYard in the chat, so you can click on that, and we'll dive into it. I guess seeing as this is it's the beginning of a show, we should introduce ourselves in case you're new to the show or you've forgotten who we are. That can happen. My name is Dominic, and with me, as always, is my good friend and co-host, that way, Chris Seekell.
Hey, everybody. I'm super excited to be talking about the Bad Batch for the first time on video exclusively for the Star Wars Underworld. We did do a cool crossover pod with Chatter Squadron a few months ago. That was awesome. But here we are on the Star Wars Underworld channel talking. So make sure everybody like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. And we have a link where you can join the broadcast and be on it in the chat and in the description of this episode. So we already have a queue, and I already see someone in the queue. So everybody's people are getting ready to go.
Yeah, so we'll start bringing people in just a second, but why don't we give our immediate reactions to it, and then we'll start bringing some folks in. So, Chris, start us off. What did you think of Escape from Camino?
I was that word you said, character based, like that describes it really well, and that's not what I was expecting. Like, I thought that we were gonna get way more plot, way more conflict, way more violence in this episode, and it was just 25 minutes of the Bad Batch crew escaping a sinking city and talking to each other about their issues. So really different type of tone for a finale of anything Star Wars, like compared to like the emotional highs and lows of some of the finales that we have in recent memory, like the finale of the Clone Wars, the finale of the last really couple seasons of The Mandalorian. This I had a really different tone, and I don't know how I feel about it yet. I kind of was expecting something different, and I'm still trying to process what we just got.
Yeah, it definitely had a different tone. That's certainly a way of a good way of putting it. And it's worth bearing in mind that it's the season finale rather than the series finale. So if we're comparing it to Clone Wars, it's a little bit of a different. They're going for a different kind of feel. But yeah, it was really character focused, and it was kind of a disaster movie. Like, it's sort of funny, all the years we spent on Clone Wars, and we talked about all the different genres and stuff that they did, never did a disaster movie. We had monster movies and war movies and all that stuff, but nothing where it was just everything around us is being destroyed. We must run if we are going to survive. And, if you want to get to know some characters, put them in mortal danger and find out what happens. And that's basically what they did for 20 some odd minutes in this episode. It was just a matter of seeing, how does Omega react? How does Crosshair react? How does Hunter react? We didn't spend a whole lot of time on Tech Wrecker and Echo, but they were there too. They were there along for the adventure. And I feel like this was the finale that this season needed. Quite often TV finales, they rely on something sort of big happening that is sort of unexpected and comes from outside the show, whether it's a cameo, somebody appearing. Obviously Mandalorian did this, perfectly last season. but I don't think you always necessarily need that. I think it's also fair to wrap up the story in a smaller kind of way.
Mm.
And the Bad Batch, I think, did just that. And I think that's what was needed for this season. This season ultimately has been a character journey. And I think it's very telling that in that final moment, the two characters that were left looking out at Camino were Crosshair and Omega, because those two have kind of been driving the arcs for this season. And yeah, I like that we went a little small. I would have been certainly would have been on board with something big, bombastic, and galaxy changing as well. But taking it down a notch a little bit and sort of saying, let's just let these characters talk to each other, which they don't normally get to do, I thought was an interesting choice, and I think it made for a pretty entertaining episode. Was it my favorite episode? Maybe not, but I think it was a solid episode. Maybe not the highest of highs to go out on, but certainly not the lowest of lows. Although they did sink to the bottom of the ocean, so perhaps literally the lowest of lows. um, but a good solid place to end that leaves us lots of fertile ground to explore next year.
Yeah, I mean, I said this about last week's episode. I said it had like a bit of finale-itis, and I feel
Mm.
like this episode has it almost worse because it is the actual finale. Like you have this expectation of like, oh wow, all these things are going to be wrapped up, or there's going to be this really interesting reveal, or there's going to be some really poignant, crazy, emotional moments. Like you have all this kind of expectations going into a finale. Like if this was not the finale, if we still had a few episodes to go, I think we would be saying like, wow, that was a really nice episode. I think the thing is like, okay, does this really work as the finale for a season, and we're not going to get more for a year? Like, is this enough for to end the season on? And that's where I'm like, I don't know. And it's kind of interesting because we're so used to the premieres and finales of Star Wars shows being the best episodes. We're so used to seeing that directed by Dave Filoni at the beginning, and it being just like really something special. And this felt like a great episode of The Bad Batch, but it's not like one of the best episodes. It's not. It doesn't have that. It didn't have that punch to it that I feel like we've had again for the ending of the Clone Wars, the ending of the last two seasons of The Mandalorian, the ending of some Star Wars films. So yeah, I don't know. Like but it is cool that they're trying something different. And I think that that's cool, and I hope that there's going to be many seasons of this show, and they're going to have opportunities to do different types of finales, and maybe they'll have some of the bigger finales as well. But for what we got out of this episode, there was some interesting stuff, a lot of interesting psychology between Omega and the rest of the good side of the Bad Batch and Crosshair. There were some developments with that as a character-based episode, which was great.
And I think that's what you needed for the ending of this season, right? Like we got all the big moments last week, like the big
Yeah.
the bombing of Camino, and sort of the action sequence with the recruits that were part of Filoni of Crosshair's group. I saw a chat that said comment that said Filoni, and I got distracted and said Filoni instead of Crosshair, which is an interesting slip up. I'm not quite entirely sure what to make of
Filoni
it.
hair.
But
Filoni has hat hair.
with with Crosshair's group, we had kind of wrapped up the sort of big galactic portion of the story last week. And so what was needed was to get into that psychology, get into what was going on with these characters, what makes them tick, and what's going to be driving them going forward. And I think it's going to be really interesting to explore what exactly happens with Crosshair now that he's his troops saw him kind of betray what they were supposed to do. His commanders, they saw him, not exactly obey every order to the letter and give the Bad Batch a choice rather than just kill them. And so you would think he can't really go back to the Empire. It's like Hunter says, they're not really the most forgiving types. And yet he still chooses not to go with the Bad Batch. And it's left on kind of this interesting note where Omega throughout the episode hadn't said a whole lot to him. They had a lot of scenes together and they exchanged a couple of words, but they never really got into it with one another. And it was kind of like almost like Omega was going for the whole idea of, some things are better left unsaid. And
Mm.
I think that moment when they're in the tunnels and Crosshair is just kind of staying behind and he's staring off into space and Omega kind of looks back at them and they exchange a look and you think she's going to go and like say something to him, and instead she just runs off and then he follows. I think that kind of embodied what Crosshair needed. I think an emotional plea to Crosshair like Hunter tries is not going to work, but Omega just sort of reaching out and saying like, and sort of showing like, I'm thinking about you. You're not forgotten. You're not being abandoned. You're not being left behind. Um, I think that speaks more to him, and that's the language he understands. And I think we saw that time and
Mm.
time again in this episode, which was interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I think Crosshair is definitely an extremely nuanced character, and that's the strong point of this episode is a character study on Crosshair. There was so much with him, and this is the character that was developed the most in this episode. And I think I'm starting to understand now what his motivations are for the first time, because before we were trying to figure it out. We're like,
Mhm.
why is he making the decisions that he's making? Because it's clearly not the chip. And that's reinforced once again in this episode that it's not the chip. So now I'm starting to think like, he's being analytical in kind of a way that Tech is, where he's just looking at the situation and he's right. The Empire is the Force. And if they're just looking to survive, their survival will be a lot easier on the side of the Empire than against it, because that is the greatest force in the galaxy right now and will be for decades. So he's of course not seeing the moral side of things. He's not seeing that, sometimes you need to put your life at risk to not aid something that is a destructive force. And so that's the part of him that's missing, that empathy for those who are being um, stomped into the ground by the Empire. That's what he's missing. But as far as his logic is concerned, he's definitely working on that side of things where that's why he's making the decisions that he's making. It is for his survival and for what he perceives is the best decision for the group as well. And he does care about them. He wants them, like, it seems like Crosshair is motivated to protect the Bad Batch. It's just his opinion about how to protect them is different than theirs. His opinion is you're safest as a part of the Empire. And he is willing to give them chance after chance after chance to join, and he's not about to just kill all of them. So that's why he saved AZ and Omega. That's why he's standing around there and they're parting in peace, because he's not a combatant. He's just someone who has a different point of view about where things should go, which I think that is a very nuanced position, because you can show that he has a little bit of humanity, at least when it comes to his connection to the Bad Batch, his connection to Omega. And that makes him a much more interesting villain or anti-hero or whatever he is than if he didn't have that nuance. If he was just out there to kill them and whenever they see him, they just got to run because he's going to shoot him. Like that's what they're doing with him is a way more interesting story than the cardboard villain that we typically will see in this position in like an animated show. And that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. It sets him up to be in a really sort of interesting place next season, and it creates some more drama that was, I think, lacking a little bit at times in this in the middle part of the season in the Crosshair storyline. It did run a little bit dry, I think, at some points, and so it's good to see it being sort of brought back to the forefront. What I think is going to be interesting is if there is anything that Crosshair that would make Crosshair sort of see the light about the Empire. Is there something that could happen that would make him want to change sides? Because I think ultimately they do want. I think Crosshair should wind up back with the Bad Batch. I think that's where this story is ultimately headed. But he's just not there yet. And so is there something, because that's usually what we see in Star Wars, is there's a moment for the characters that are involved in the Empire where they realize that what they're doing is wrong. And the way this episode was sort of set up and the way Tech was kind of talking about Crosshair makes it seem like that's not really possible for him. And we haven't seen the moment or the thing that Crosshair cares about them enough to that if the Empire took it away, it would make him want to break from them. You would think it would be the Bad Batch, his brothers, but that hasn't seemed to be the thing so far. So it'll be interesting to see what becomes of that storyline as season 2 and hopefully beyond plays out.
Yeah, I think that what he hasn't seen is unfairness on the part of the Empire. I think he's
Mhm.
seeing the Empire as a known entity, as a powerful organization that if you can do something for them, they're going to reward you. And I think that, he functions very similarly. Like, I think he has kind of a really cutthroat mentality as well. I mean, you saw what he did to those civilians who were on the wrong side on Onderon. Like, so he's not going to be sentimental at all. If somebody's on the wrong side, he's gonna get them. And so I think that that's why the Bad Batch's plea to him and their argument that, like, hey, look, the Empire, they left you behind. They left you to die. Why do you want to go back to them? Like, we will save you. We did save you. Omega saved you, and the Empire left you to die. But in his view, he's like, well, I became a liability to the Empire. I mean, he knows that he just murdered a bunch of Imperial soldiers.
Mhm.
So like he understands that them leaving him was fair. He understands that he needs to go back to, he needs to prove his worth again to them. And then he believes in his view that it's fair if he goes back and he does that. So I think the thing that needs to happen is he needs to be shown that he can't be in control with the Empire, because so far I think that he's felt like he's been able to control the situation with the Empire. He's been able, whatever choices he's made, he's gotten the results that he's wanted to get. I think he needs to make a choice and then not get the results that he wants to get. Like, do everything he can to rejoin and them still say no, and then he has nowhere to turn. Like something like that. Or join and then they betray him. They give him a bad deal where, he expects something different and he doesn't understand, why they just did that. Like something like that needs to happen. Or he needs to treat one of the members of the Bad Batch unfairly as well in some way, which again, it's hard because they're enemies. How do you treat your enemy unfairly? But I think, again, it's about fairness. His worldview of the logic of everything needs to get broken up, and he needs to understand that he cannot play with fire. He cannot play games with the Empire and expect to come on top.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's probably a likely storyline for him in season 2. That seems like the kind of thing that if we're going to continue to follow him as sort of separate from the rest of the Bad Batch, we have to see that play out, or we have to see the Empire accept him and go along and have him fall back into the fold, and then he just becomes what he was for this season, which was a straight up villain, a full on villain. So
Yeah.
it's characters they've made Crosshair into such an interesting character, and I'm glad that they were able to sort of get that storyline back on the up, because it was one of the places that I felt like it started to sag in the middle of this season. There were a couple of episodes there where I was like, oh, okay, so we're just kind of running from Crosshair, and it's okay, it's fun, it makes for an interesting story, or it makes for an interesting half hour of show, but it needs more. And they've given it that. Another standout for this episode is just the visuals. This
Yes.
thing is just gorgeous. All of those sequences in Camino, the explosions, the destruction of the city, rescuing Crosshair from the underwater sequence, getting those medical capsules, whatever those weird glass
Yeah.
coffins were, up to the surface, and then when they got up to the surface and there was all of that burning wreckage around them, it's pretty beautiful, pretty gorgeous stuff, and very good work from the team there working on the Bad Batch.
Yeah, I mean, from that perspective, this definitely was a finale,
Yeah.
worthy episode from the budget and from the work that was put into the visuals. The FX were absolutely amazing. All the underwater stuff. They've come so far with this show. Going back to the Clone Wars and treating it as one long continuum of progression with FX.
Mhm.
They've come so far since the first few episodes that happened underwater. We're back to like those DAC, or what do they call it now? Mon Cala episodes and stuff like that. Like all the like that, there's just the motion of the floating and like Omega's hair kind of like floating around. And then yeah, everything is just so detailed. And yeah, the explosions are amazing. And just the sky, like this shot when they're back on the surface and then they kind of pan down from the sky. I was like, that's a real sky. That's
Yeah.
that's live action. That's a live action sky that I'm seeing right there. And it's not till we see the actual platform that it's like, oh yes, this is CGI.
Yeah. And I mean, there were a couple of shots of the water too, where it was like, oh, did they
Mm,
just go out to the what is it, Lake Ewok there at Skywalker Ranch and point the camera at it to get some assets? Yeah, it's gorgeous, gorgeous stuff. All right, one more thing before we start bringing
yeah.
in some calls, and we've got a very patient caller who's been waiting. The final scene with Nala Se,
Mm.
and some people who dress a lot like Dr. Pershing from The Mandalorian. What do you make of it? What do you think? What's going on here? Is this is the setup for Rise of Skywalker, or is there more to
Ooh,
this?
that's a really long setup that would take a very long time to pay off if that's what indeed they're doing. I think it's more likely that they're setting up stuff related to the Mandalorian
Mm,
than Rise of Skywalker and the whole idea of cloning Grogu. I think that maybe they're creating whatever program that ends up being. So I think that could be it, and I think they're just maybe we're talking about like what is the plot of this show actually going to be. They're so far away from A New Hope. They're so far away from Rebels. What are they going to do all this time, and how are you going to make it interesting, and how are you going to make it not too dark? Well, maybe if they have this subplot where the Empire tries to create their own versions of clones, and then they get defeated by the Bad Batch, and then they're not around for A New Hope, and that's how the Rebels actually win. That's a way where you can kind of like do a rebellion without doing a rebellion and have the Bad Batch be
mm.
heroic when there really is nothing for them to do during
It
this timeline.
it would also explain why it's so important that they get Dr. Pershing back
Yeah,
on Mandalorian, and why his research is so
yeah,
sort of chaotic and all over the place. Because if the Bad Batch could get in there and destroy what Nala Se is working on, then all of a
yeah,
sudden whoever follows her up in that role has to kind of piece together what she was working on, and that would explain why they're not further along
yeah,
when it comes to the Bad Batch. All right,
yeah.
let's add in our
Oh,
third host for this
yay.
morning.
Oh, hello. I'm so sorry I'm delayed. It's a lovely Bad Batchy evening here. Hello.
I
How are
think
y'all
the
doing?
Bad Batch takes like 15 minutes to travel to Australia,
I
so
think so.
that,
It's got to
that's
go through
fine.
the water first. And then we got it here.
And it's
Hello.
true when you watch the episode,
Uh,
it's upside down, right? That's
Yes, yeah, yeah, we've got to invert it. It's like it's
everything's upside
horrific.
down. Yeah.
joining us
Wow.
now from the Star Wars Culture Podcast. We've got Hannah Raeside. Hannah, good morning, good evening. What is it? I don't know. Uh,
It's evening. It's evening time. Hello. Thank you
I've
for
never
having
I've
me
never
on.
seen you in the dark before.
I know,
This is
it's
weird.
really dark. Is this enough lighting? I hope you can see me
You're
okay.
fine. It's just
Um,
it's different.
I know,
I'm
it's
used to
usually
everything being
I'm
bright
usually a
morning
morning
sun.
show. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, yes. No, it's good. It's like Bad Batch is like a dinner time program that comes out here because it comes out right at like, yeah, that kind of dinner time, which is good. But yeah, I'm so excited to be here. I have lots of thoughts of this episode. Lots of thoughts. So I'm very at discussing to get these discussions going with you guys. But I haven't seen the first part of this, what you've already discussed. But I'm ready to get into it. So I might
We've
repeat
been
myself.
talking
But
for a bit, so let's hear you talk for a little bit. What did you
yeah.
think of this episode?
Yeah, cool. So it was good. It was good. Full stop. But off the bat, little bit underwhelmed. Little bit underwhelmed. There's obviously a lot of hype around this, around coming into this episode. Last week's episode was very momentous. I feel like a lot happened, and it got a lot of questions circling around, and everyone kind of had all these thoughts of what could happen and amazing theories. And I felt like this episode would have been a fantastic middle of the season episode. I feel like it had an interesting storyline and it was going in a cool place, but I feel like it didn't hit the mark for me for a season 1, season finale, the first season finale we've seen. But I still enjoyed it. I still, anything Bad Batch was enjoyable to me this season. So I was happy with it, but not quite what I was looking for. That's my take. That's
fair. It, as we were talking about, it's not your typical finale, right? We expect finales to be like the season 2 finale of The Mandalorian, where it's like, here's a surprise appearance by a beloved character.
Oh yeah.
And this was a little bit more like, oh no, let's just take all the characters we've already have, put them in a disaster movie, and find out what happens. And I mean, that's what we saw over the course of this episode. Should we take a call? Are we ready to do that?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. All right. I'm adding in. We got Joel Davis.
Hey.
Hello. Good morning.
Good morning.
Joel, tell us what you thought of the episode.
Oh, I had a blast. It was fun. I find it interesting how we all kind of thought like the ending was gonna have like this clone rebellion on Kamino, like the Battlefront 2 campaign, and then Kamino gets completely wiped out and destroyed. I kind of like that though. I like the kind of subversion of our expectation, and they're like, oh, it's a character piece, and I really like that. I really love what they're gonna do with Crosshair. I kind of hope he doesn't rejoin the Empire. I kind of want him to like just kind of be on his own, like kind of making all the wrong choices and stuff. Like maybe like he's still looking for that purpose, and then who knows? Maybe he'll run into a crazy Zabrak and some girl named Kira. It's like, hey, want to join us? We're doing stuff.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Good take.
Or I guess Paul Bettany, because he'd be alive. And I have a theory. I have a theory on the final scene on where that place is. I believe that planet we saw is a planet called Wayland, and the mountain is called Mount Tantus. And if you know anything about the Thrawn trilogy, you know that Mount Tantus was a vault that with all the Emperor's cool hidden stuff. But the biggest thing in that vault was a bunch of cloning facilities that Thrawn needed to supplement stormtroopers to rebuild his forces for his campaign. So I think that we could possibly, if it is set up for Mando, that Thrawn's found that old base again. It's like, well, the Empire needs soldiers. I have a fleet that I'm building ships for. Put 2 and 2 together. Yeah. Maybe this Gideon guy can help out.
Ooh.
That's a really
a deep pull, but it's possible.
I just assumed it was the place from 2 weeks ago.
I mean, I did too, but I saw someone also suggest Mount Tantus, so I'm going to go with that too.
When you were setting up that theory, I thought you were going to say it was Mount Yoda from the famous Glove of Darth Vader or infamous Glove of Darth Vader books. No, I like that. Even if it is the place from last week, they could make a little tweak to the old story and just say, oh no, this is the new location of the Emperor's vault.
Oh yeah, I mean, the Emperor has lots of vaults.
And talking about direction and storyline for future season 2, Thrawn. I actually hadn't considered that character coming up in the series, but there's actually some pocket. I don't know what he's doing right at this time of Bad Batch, but I feel like there's a pocket that he could show up in that would be an interesting, even just alluding to what he's doing at this time, and maybe they would come across Thrawn a little later on. I kind of like that idea that he could possibly show up in future seasons. That's interesting. Very interesting.
Why not? Bring him in. Just keep bringing in all the characters, because
I'm shocked. Speaking of characters, I'm shocked no Rex or Ahsoka cameo, but I'm glad. I was like, okay, where's my bingo? Where's my Filoni bingo?
Yeah, well, I think Filoni realized after Rebels, he was getting a little predictable with the Ahsoka cameos in the first season. He needed to shake it up, and so he made us wait 2 seasons for Mandalorian, and we will wait 3 seasons for Bad Batch, just to keep us on our toes, keep us guessing.
Ooh,
absolutely.
When the when the time is to see Ahsoka.
It's called the Filoni cycle.
Exactly.
Well, that was that was one of the earliest rumors about this show too. Was that Ahsoka was going to pop up? It was Rex and Ahsoka that they were going to show up, and we got Rex,
Got one.
but no Ahsoka.
Or Bo-Katan. I was surprised he didn't show up either. Like, I'm kind of trying to think, okay, this has to either connect to Book of Boba or Mando. And probably Book of Boba is probably going to connect more to Omega. It's a cameo or something. But, I mean, no Boba either, so I was shocked about that too.
I like. Can I just say I like that there were no cameos in this finale.
Yeah.
I like that it was
that's fine.
just the Bad Batch.
Yeah.
I think the whole having a cameo in the finale is kind of becoming predictable, and it's kind of almost become a bit of a joke. Like, you're looking at every Marvel show and you think, oh, who's going to be the cameo? And you look at every Star Wars show, oh, who's going to be the cameo? And everybody's looking to be surprised and to have our expectations be subverted. In a weird sort of way, this episode subverted our expectations by being not very surprising at all.
I was surprised by not being surprised, so I guess that way it's surprising.
A lot happened, but also not a lot happened. And, that I think it worked. I think it worked out all right.
Yeah, and I agree with you there in terms of like the pacing of it is a lot happened, but not a lot happened. I think a lot happened internally. It was very, apart from, the kind of the fun action of trying to get to the top. And that was stressful at times when they were in the tubes and you're like, oh my gosh, just get to the surface. Oh my God. Like there was stress in that. But in terms of like the actual episode ending, I didn't mind how it was quite a bit calm. It was very like somber.
I don't know why, but I felt like I was watching the Titanic film. I don't know why. That was the film that popped in my head.
Fair. Yeah, that's fair.
Just without the people dying and the romance.
Hold on longer, Jack.
We needed a band of Bith musicians just playing in the background the whole time, trying to distract him.
Well, didn't Omega like drop her headdress in the ocean in an earlier episode or something?
What happened? How did
her hair got wet?
Where did it go?
Yeah, her hair got wet. Where did it go? Where did it left? Like second episode,
at the bottom of the ocean.
It was the third episode that went away. I forgot.
Yeah, that's got to come back at some point. That seems important enough. Okay, when they're in the tubes, they're under the water, and the beast attacks. Am I the only one who thought, is that a Zillo beast?
Ooh, no. I didn't think about Zillo beast. I thought there's always a bigger fish.
Yeah. I thought that. I thought Phantom, but I didn't think Zillo. Can they exist underwater?
Well, it's just the last thing we saw with the Zillo beast was, that doctor character going, you want me to clone the beast? And I thought, maybe they got to work on it. Maybe they got it started and they were just hiding it. And just its teeth and the way it looked in the couple of those shots, I was wondering. And then
I got freaked out by that. The underwater monsters, I think, are the scariest. Like, the ocean's kind of scary if you think about it. Like, you don't know what's under there.
That is the biggest loose end in all of Star Wars, the Zillo Beast clones. Like,
Zillo Beast, what happened?
I know.
We need answers.
Come on,
why?
you're trying in other
or
stuff.
Season 8, I guess.
Well, season 9, because this was just season 8 that just wrapped up.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
so I guess season 9, which means we're getting it next year. Yes. Can't wait for those Zillo.
So would this be like Rebels -4 season, if depending how long this go before we get to season 0?
Is that a thing?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
I think it works out. Yeah,
but that means that episode 1 is actually episode -3. So
this is
anyway.
Star Wars -3, the Phantom Menace.
Oh, jeez. But on your comment, Dom, about the cameo thing. Back to that conversation. I think we had some interesting cameos throughout the season, but like with the hype of expectation of, Ahsoka's going to be in the show, and even like the way Rex was in it, and the what he actually did for the show, it was very minimal and light on, and he was very like, he was just basically a messenger and making sure this was getting done. You got your chips out, great. Stay safe, guys. Catch you later. Like, it was very light on. It wasn't very cameo heavy, which I think in theory we want to be like, oh, well, let's see Ahsoka and Rex, but I think it was really tastefully done, those cameos, and only little bits of that Rex, and people still went wild for like the 8 minutes he was probably on screen the whole season.
Great 8 minutes.
Yeah, it was a good 8 minutes. But I think you're right in saying that I don't think, with this kind of the somber way this episode was trying to finish this season for us, I think it was a good choice not to do that cameo, because if it was like, oh, the Bad Batch somber, having all these questions and conversations, oh my gosh, Ahsoka, like, it would have been like a total takeaway from it. I think you're right in saying that. It would have like just ruined it. It would have been out of place if there was a big cameo in here.
Yeah, you look at the Mandalorian season 1 finale, and I think there's a lot of parallels that we could draw between this season 1 finale and that season 1 finale, right? That one had no cameos. It didn't really it had a little moment at the end, sort of like this one, that sort of teased what was to come with Gideon with the Darksaber and all that stuff. And the emotional crux of it was the stuff with IG-11. So it was a droid at the center of it. Again, looks like the droid seemed to make it out of this one, but he didn't in that one. But had Luke Skywalker shown up at the end of that, would we remember IG-11's sacrifice as fondly as we do? I'm not sure we would. And I think taking 2 seasons to get to that big cameo, taking 16 episodes, was the right call for that show. And Bad Batch did more cameos in season 1 than Mando did, certainly, but I think keeping the focus a little bit smaller for the finale, just like they did for Mando in season 1, it puts them in a good place. And just like Mandalorian, I expect season 2 to expand the universe in bigger ways and exciting ways, and to start drawing us even more into some of those other storylines and story threads that we know are out there that could be picked up upon. Whether it's
I have a way that they could use Darth Vader cameo.
Yeah.
I have a way they could use the Darth Vader cameo, I think, perfectly. I think when you bring in Darth Vader, I think that's when you really show, okay, the Empire is here. And I not mean like, oh, like the Empire is here in the same way like, like the Republic Star Cruisers. I mean, you want the Vader cameo when you see a New Hope Star Destroyer, you see the TIE Fighters, you see the Stormtroopers in the armor that we all recognize. It's like, okay, they have completely transitioned now to Empire. There is no more, the remnants of the old Republic have been swept away, as Tarkin would say, even though the Senate's still around. And then you just see Darth Vader, and it's like, okay, the Empire we all know and loathe or love is here, and Darth Vader's leading the charge, and like, all heck's gonna break loose now. You and they can't stand a chance. Rogue One hallway scene.
Yeah, that's one I hope they hold off on, because while I think Rebels used Vader well, I think they brought him in too early. Because once you go to Vader, everything else, even Maul and Thrawn, doesn't quite feel like the same threat. And so Vader is endgame material. You got to save him for the ending, for the.
But speaking of villains, though, speaking of villains, Rampart's still alive. We got Rampart. Like, hey, he didn't die! Hooray!
Yeah,
I like Rampart. I think he's kind of standing out as a Imperial officer villain, which I feel like are hard to do, because it's sort of like you see one, you see them all, and it's like very few do they stand out like a Tarkin or a Thrawn.
Yeah,
so it's like, okay, this guy's standing out and he's alive. So it's like we get to see more of whatever heck he's working on. So
yeah,
Crosshair's boss or not. So
yeah, the Imperial officer characters aren't really all that important. When on Rebels, they just use the same one, but have them all wear their hat like that.
Yeah. Absolutely. You're like, oh no, we don't need to pay attention to this guy.
Yeah.
Actually, I have to say, Chris, your hat looks so much like an Imperial hat. I feel like I said that to you last week.
Right.
It's just so, it's right. It looks exactly like it.
I feel like we have to be careful what we say, because otherwise you're going to report it up the chain to,
That's it.
Yeah.
The character.
No. Long live the Empire. Hooray. But yeah, I think they used Rampart the exact right amount this season, because they made him into enough of a threat that we took him seriously, which, as you're saying, Joel, is tough to do with Imperial officer characters. They did that fairly effectively, again, to go back to Rebels and to make that comparison. They did that fairly effectively over the course of season 1 with Agent Callus. But then they made him into kind of the primary villain for a lot of season 2, all of the non Darth Vader, non Inquisitor stuff. And I didn't think that really helped his character. And I hope they continue to use Rampart sparingly, so that when he does show up, it's important. And it's going to be really interesting to see what the next season looks like from a villain's standpoint, because we're not quite sure what to make of Crosshair, where he's going to go. I hope they don't overuse Rampart. They're using Tarkin very sparingly, which is another thing I think is a good call. Make sure it's important when he shows up. Who's going to be the bad guy? Roland Durant.
I can kind of see season 2 as sort of the underworld season, though. Like I wouldn't put it past them if, as I said, Crimson Dawn, that crazy Zabrak shows up again. I mean, Maul is alive and he's still doing his thing. He's kind of starting up his business, and they do have Paul Bettany's character's assets, so they're using him eventually.
Dryden, yeah, it would be really interesting if they use the Bad Batch as the vehicle to bring in all the characters from Solo, because we're like, at what point are we going to get more stories with these characters? Because I feel like we've been kind of cheated out of them by the box office performance of that film. And that film had some of the best world building of all the Star Wars films, with the Crimson Dawn and Kira. Very fascinating stuff. So it would be very interesting if they use the Bad Batch as the vehicle to continue with those stories and pick up with them at some point. I'd love to see that.
Well, if you want more Kira, check out War of the Bounty Hunters. It's
Right.
Have you been hired to do the promotion by Marvel, Joel? Is that
I wish. I wish.
You hear?
Phenomenal.
Yeah. I'll mention again. If you want to join in our call, you can do so. The link is here in the chat. So anybody that's listening live that wants to jump in on the conversation, click that link. You can't click it on the screen, but it's in the chat on the side there. I think.
Which side? That's side. That's right over there. Yeah.
Yeah, over there.
Phenomenal.
Or if you're watching on your phone, it's probably underneath.
Yeah.
If you're watching on your phone, which most people probably are.
True. All right. What else stood out to everybody in this episode?
Well, it's just AZ. I mean, AZ. I loved that incorporation. I don't know if you spoke about him before I came on, but AZ was a fantastic character addition to, I loved how he popped up earlier in the season, and as soon as he came on the screen, you're just like, oh my gosh, Fives, AZ, oh my god, like everything just kind of came together and hit me. I was like, all this emotion of all these clones, that classic and really intense arc from season 6 of Clone Wars, of him and Fives and that whole journey they went on together, and then for that to be such a big tie-in. It was just a little hinted at earlier in the season, and then for AZ to be such an integral part of this episode, I loved, because every time I see him, I just think of Fives, and I just think of, AZ. It's such an interesting storyline of how a droid, an automated machine that like has no emotions, can. You feel like he really does carry emotion and connect, and you can connect with him on the screen as well. But I loved his addition into the story tonight, and I think that was a really good move. Like, in terms of like, if we're not going to get good cameos, let's get some good character connections, and I think AZ was a fantastic choice.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like aside from like lightsaber fights and like the mysticism of the Force, one of the things that Star Wars does the best is droids, is making us feel for robots.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many
iconic
robots in Star Wars. You got R2, you got 3PO, you got BB-8, you got K2, L3. It just keeps going on and on and on and on. There's so many robots.
Recently too, that's been a trend. Like, even Skywalker, that was my favorite 3PO movie.
It really has. So So yeah, AZ is just another example of them humanizing a droid and giving it personality and making us feel emotions towards it, like it's a sentient character. Because really, droids are sentient in Star Wars, which is one of the great things about Star Wars. And I was expecting someone to die in this episode because of that whole stuff about like the kind are crying and like all that stuff. And so and of course we had been going back and forth about, you know what, they're just I don't think they can they don't have the thermal detonators to kill off any of the Bad Batch members right now. But I think maybe AZ, as the episode was progressing, I'm like, okay, this is how maybe they're gonna do it. This is how they're gonna kill somebody, but it's gonna be okay because it's just, a droid, but we're still gonna feel, and this is how we're gonna do it, and they can preserve the main cast. Like, so I thought AZ was a goner the entire episode.
Yeah,
but no.
Droid depths. Droid deaths in Star Wars are the equivalent of dog deaths in other movies. They always hit, even more so than
droids are the dogs of Star Wars.
Oh, very much so, very much so.
Yes.
And that I was thinking the same thing as AZ was falling to the bottom of the ocean there at the end. Although I will say that I think enough had happened with Crosshair that I wasn't worried when he pulled out that rifle. I wasn't worried that he was going to shoot Omega. I feel like I was
worried for a second. I'm like, what is he doing? Is he going to say like, "Don't rescue them or I'll shoot you"? Like that's the first reaction. And then he shot past, and I'm like, oh, I see what he's doing. They're trying to like give him some redeeming qualities that make sense from a writing perspective. But I don't know. Do you guys think that it took away from the episode that AZ survived, or do you think that Star Wars needs those deaths to kind of like get it to the depth that it needs to be?
No, it worked. I think it worked, and this opens up AZ to become a regular character next season, which I think as soon as he popped up again last week, I thought, oh yeah, this guy's along for the ride.
he's gonna stay on. Yeah.
Something you guys brought up earlier about Crosshair's arc and like how he kind of doesn't have like a moral center, like what's going to take for him to break the Empire. I don't know why I was thinking this, but I feel like Crosshair and Hunter are like very two sides of the same coin in a way. Like they kind of have the same objective, is to kind of take care of the family, essentially. It's just, I think Crosshair is very much, I don't care about the morality sense. Hunter, in a strange way, he cares more about the morality. Like he's not going to start shooting civilians left, right, and center. But I still think he has a bit of growing to do in a sense that he's still very, very just about the taking care of the family. But he's not really thinking like big picture yet of like, okay, like he's still working for Sid. Like Sid's kind of like Sid's still, she's probably on the nicer side of the underworld's gray pantheon of criminals compared to like say Darth Maul or Crimson Dawn. But they're like, Hunter's still very much in that camp of like, I'm just doing it to protect the family. I gotta do this, and he's not. And I think kind of both of them need to kind of get to a morality sense in a way where Hunter's like, okay, now it's time to join the rebellion. Crosshair's like, I just need some morals at this point.
Yeah, I was getting a bit tired of Hunter a couple of points this season.
Oh, there he is. Oh, right next to you.
Just in case you forgot who he was. Not so much. I guess maybe not tired of him, but he was starting to get on my nerves a little bit, and I think this was intentional. I don't think this was like a problem with the show, but because it was, people were constantly telling him, "You have to fight. You have to stand up for what you believe in. You have to fight for what you believe in." And he was always saying, "No, I have to sort of protect my own." And I think if there was one thing that for me was a little bit missing from this finale, was some kind of resolution on that. I would have liked there to be the moment where Hunter realized, I can't sit this fight out. I have to get involved. And we didn't quite get that. Although he did say, when he was making his pitch to Crosshair, he did kind of lean into the fact that the Empire is evil, the Empire is doing all the wrong things. So he knows. This guy knows that at some point I think he knows, like in his core, that at some point he's going to have to get into the fight, but he's been resisting it up until now. And I think Echo is like getting a little frustrated with him, and I share Echo's frustration. I think Echo was kind of speaking for the audience a couple of times when it was like, "Come on, man, just call Rex and get involved. That's what you have to do. It's what you got to do."
Absolutely. I completely agree with you there. I think you make a good point of the finale. It needed some sort of sense of resolution, or even just, you know what, I think we need to do something. Like, it just some sort of a line to be like, okay, we're gonna take this direction or start to go in this kind of direction where, and yeah, he was really like, indecisive all season and trying to just be anti-conflict and just keep it safe. But yeah, and we didn't get that in this finale. We didn't get his kind of conclusion there or conclusive thoughts. You know what actually this episode feels like? This feels like the part one of a finale. It feels like next week we should get the big finale now. Like, this is like, oh, this is all these questions. Oh, what's going to happen? And then next week. But yeah, so.
Or a mid-season finale. It kind of
even.
Like, we're taking a couple of weeks off for Christmas, but come on back in January, and this is what's going on. We'll pick up the story.
You know, someone who was taking the lead, though, was Omega. Like, she's starting to show her leadership chops, and if Mr. Hunter dies, I think Omega, she's technically the older sister anyway, so...
Yeah.
That's such a weird concept to, like, bring up. I was like, ooh.
So, it's crazy that Star Wars has done it twice, because, like, they did it with this guy over here.
Yeah.
For those who are listening, if you're listening, I don't know how you're listening, but I'm pointing to Grogu. But they did it with Grogu and now Omega. There's two kid characters that are older than the adults.
It's very
I mean, trust me,
what's this line?
There's a lot of weird cloning discussions out there, especially if you like talk about like how old is Rey's dad supposed to be technically? Is he enhanced age? Like. Is he raising a family and technically only like 10 years old? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Wow.
So we got a comment from Kenneth, who is from Australia.
Woo!
And he says,
represent. Sorry.
He says, no, I was expecting that. He says, leaving it open with Crosshair must mean that they aren't going to fight the Empire. I bet they go into the criminal element. Yeah, that's an interesting point that Kenneth has brought up, is that, you know, because that Crosshair conflict is still there, you know, there's that could be still the main conflict that exists with them. They could stay away from the overall Imperial conflict and deal more with, continue dealing with the underworld. I mean, they've already dealt with the underworld so much this season with bounty hunters and them coming after Omega and them trying to do jobs for Sid. This has been a very underworld season, and this could continue with that Crosshair, with everything remaining very similar with Crosshair. They're basically set up to continue the same types of stories next season that they had this season, which I don't know how I feel about that.
I wonder maybe if they want Crosshair to be almost our sympathetic character we sympathize with, who can be in the Imperial eyes, like, so that we can have at least, it's not just villain centric all the time. Which, I mean, I like villain centric scenes because, you know, those are the fun part. Maybe like sort of like agent, like more like you get in with like. But with Crosshair, you get more like a sympathetic, not a view of the Empire, obviously, but it's more like, here's the character we're kind of feeling sorry for, and he's like with the Empire, so we kind of like are viewing him as like, oh, Empire's doing some nasty stuff with these cloning things or whatever. So it's like, they sort of go back and forth. Or almost like with Tam in Resistance, when we got her like sent to the First Order.
They could definitely do that. I don't know. This is an interesting thing that I'm thinking about. Now, Dominic, do you think that this finale changed enough to really make season 2 different than season 1 in any way?
I don't. It's interesting. It does kind of leave us in a very familiar place, and you know, that's in one sense it's not a bad thing, because I did like this season and I enjoyed this season, but at the same time, I do, as you've been talking, I do think that, you know, I'd like to find a new threat, a different threat, something that we're not necessarily even thinking of. Because right now we're saying Empire, Underworld. Those are things we're already aware of. I'd like to see something something else that's maybe a variation on those, that's some kind of a combination of those, but something that's just really unexpected, something that makes this show stand out, because the show already stands out with its lead characters kind of being different types of clones that we're not used to seeing, a clone that's super strong or one that's super techy or any of that stuff. But I feel like its villains, with the exception of Crosshair, have been fairly by the numbers, and there've been good examples of classic Star Wars villains, like, as we were talking about, Vice Admiral Rampart's a very good Imperial officer villain. But I'd like to see something else step out, some kind of villain that really feels like they changed the game, that when you're going up against them, it's a different sort of threat.
I think it's obvious.
Oh yeah,
I think it's obvious. The Zillo Beast.
Darth Maul riding a Zilla Beast.
Obvious.
Yes,
Sorry,
Darth Maul
keep going. We're on a good tangent there. Sorry.
Yeah, but what would the Zillo Beast look like with spider legs? That would be something else. Yeah.
Yes, but yeah, different villainary. Villainary.
Villainary. We're going with it.
That would be villainary.
Yeah.
Villainary. Okay, cool. Great.
We have a new word.
Yeah, that's what we're
on this day.
It's 4:23 a.m. where I am. So inventing new words just is par for the course.
Dominic has it the worst.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Woo!
We're shocked he's still. I was just there was a point where you'd had like a 10-second blink like 20 minutes ago, and I'm like, all right, that's it. He's done. He's gonna fall asleep on air. This is gonna happen.
Asleep on stream. Oh, my
that's one thing for all of the wacky things we've done in podcasting, I've never fallen asleep in the middle of a show. I will not have that be.
Imagine.
I mean,
gonna happen.
It's possible that this maybe that new threat is whatever Nala say and the Empire is working. I mean, there's some weird dark science, secrets only the Sith knew stuff going on in that facility. So maybe
that's probably what it is.
I hope so. I mean, that's sort of this thing about this show, and honestly, it's something I've always kind of had a big problem with Star Wars animated series in general. Is they always are kind of limited to what they can do. Like I yearn for the animated Star Wars show that can be saga big. Like they can destroy their empire or whatever they're fighting. It's like, but we can't destroy the empire. Empire's got 25 years of just getting worse. How many big threats can there really be? Like this is kind of Palpatine consolidating power, not more wars starting, and sort of like, you can have small conflicts, sure, but you can't have a big one until like Scarif starts. Even Rebels skirted that line to a certain extent that I feel like you could argue maybe didn't always kind of broke. I don't want to say broke in, but it's like
one thing I do expect to see more of next season that could potentially not quite fill the role of the new villainary, but at least start approaching that and could shake things up is I think we're going to see a lot more clone commando action.
Ooh, yeah.
We got that tease 2 weeks ago now with the Gregor episode. And then in that final scene, I think it was very telling. I think we saw 2 new clone commandos standing there on whatever planet that was when Nala Se was arriving. So I think that's going to be part of it. That's going to be explored. And I hope to see more of the clone rebellion stuff, the clones kind of standing up to the Empire in an interesting way. There was a small moment in this episode right at the beginning after the bombardment is done, when we're on the bridge of the Star Destroyer and Rampart is getting the update from that clone trooper.
Yep.
And that clone, his voice kind of breaks. He can't. It's hard for him to say what's happened to Kamino. His home is gone. It's been destroyed, and he's not necessarily okay with it. He's kind of struggling with it. And this was something, Chris, you and I talked a lot about last week, with like, what does the destruction of Kamino mean to the characters? And I think we saw a little bit of it in that in that moment, that for the clones, this is a traumatic, devastating event. Perhaps not on par with Order 66, but it certainly means a lot to them.
I wonder how many people clones will know, though. Like, if we're going to keep this on the hush and hush, Are all those clones who were there? Are we just gonna blow up the ship once Rampart's gone? Like, okay, all the non-clones are gone to that ship. We blow them up. No one knows. Complete secrecy.
Yeah.
Maybe.
This definitely answered that question that we had on earlier podcasts where we were like, is it a good thing or a bad thing that Camino is being destroyed? And I think that
I still don't think we have an answer for that. I still think we have an answer for that. I think, like, for the characters, yes, there's some that it's a bad thing.
That's what I'm talking
Yeah.
about. For the
Mhm.
characters in the show internally, do they feel good or bad about this? Because we felt like there was some bittersweetness, and the sweetness was the fact that Omega didn't want to go back. So we're talking about that. But then looking at Omega, looking over the water at the flaming wreckage of Camino, you could tell I think there's sadness there.
But-
She's like, she can't believe that it's really gone.
Is it like sadness, like, oh, I wish this were still here because I want to live here, or is it sadness like when Luke Skywalker goes back to the homestead and sees it burning up, and it's sort of like, well, it's less sadness because I love this place and I love this chapter in my life, but more just sort of that wistfulness, that sadness, that one chapter of your life is ending.
Yeah.
Knowing potentially that
It can be that.
a better one is on the way. I read it as sort of Luke looking at Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru burning up there on Tatooine.
The crispy skeletons.
Yeah.
That's the same. Yeah, that's the same thing. There is basically, it's not a rejoiceful moment. Like, that's what we're contrasting here. Are they going to be rejoicing like after the Death Star is blown up, or is it going to be more like Luke and the homestead? And I think it's way more like Luke and the homestead. They're not excited about this happening.
Right. Also,
yeah. Sorry, you go, Joel.
Oh no, I would just to go back to something. I just thought of like another idea of what you could do with like the villainy category of like villains, and this is actually an old. I don't know if it's a Lucas concept or an EU concept that was built on by Lucas, but like the idea of mad clones. Because I think like one of the old ideas from the Clone Wars, which either was Tim Zahn said it or Lucas himself made it up, was like the clones were like crazy. Like, they weren't, like, stable clones. These were, like, crazy, insane clones who were, like, not in the right mind. I wonder if, like, that could be something they're pulling from. I would love Bad Batch to pull from a lot of the old ideas of the Clone Wars that the old EU and Lucas kind of developed and changed over time. And we kind of like to see a lot of that because this is about clones. So let's just go out and, like, let's pull some old ideas because that's kind of... Star Wars loves to recycle old ideas anyway, so let's do that. Yeah. And Clone Madness could be one of those ideas.
Clone Madness. Yeah, no, definitely. And I think there's a lot of like opportunity to go into more of the psyche of clones. One of my favorite things of Clone Wars is that journey we go on with the clones, with Rex, even with Cody and with the 501st, and knowing their story, and especially to those last end of the season 7 and all that kind of stuff. Those conversations Rex is having about, what happens to us after the war, and planting those questions. And I remember when he said that line in season 7, I have not stopped thinking about that question. It's just like, as soon as he said it, I was just like, that's a good point. What happens? What do you do, like, as a clone? And I kind of love the fact that they were planting all these questions in these later seasons of Clone Wars, and then we're kind of seeing that in fruition now. And just, thinking back to the conversation about Camino and seeing its demise, it's like the way clones were just so gun-ho about Camino, and like, you remember the Battle of Camino, and like that we have this arc there, the ARC Troopers episode. It's just, everyone is just so, even if they don't even like the Kaminoans, or even if it is a bit bitter, or even like an Omega, if she doesn't even want to be there, there is this real like vicious connection with the place where it's like brotherhood. This is in our blood, like this is our blood, this place. So it's, I was really quite sad to see Camino go down the way it had and did, but I do agree with what I think Chris, you said that before, where it was kind of needed for the show, and it was needed for the characters. It was a good move, but very, very sad to see Camino go, but very interesting for the clone.
End of an era.
Yeah, end of an era. Yeah,
I think we're all kind of wearing our graduation goggles for Camino here, where it's like it doesn't matter how you felt for the last 4 years. On that last day, you're like, God, I'm gonna miss this high school, and then you realize
That's
as soon as you're out,
exactly what it's like. You're like,
yeah,
oh, God,
Yeah.
I hate this place every day. And then the second you're gone, you're like, well, that was kind of nice.
yeah, suddenly it's all wistful and nice,
It
and I
was
feel
just, yeah.
I feel like Omega was experiencing that a little bit in this episode.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it was the only home she ever knew, and even though
Mm.
she never wanted to go back there, I don't think she wanted to see it go up in a fiery, burning wreck either.
Mm.
I have a joke I want to make about my high school, but I won't say it. I'm not going to say it.
Oh, well, that's it. Well, that's a
I'm
tease.
not going to
Oh,
say it.
no.
Whoa, come on.
Oh,
I don't.
dear.
I don't want the RCMP to show up at my door.
Nope.
With an arson charge.
Oh
I
my
do wonder
God.
what
Yeah.
we will see of those other clones in Camino. Like, where did they all go? Like, I kind of joked to a friend,
Well,
like, oh,
you know what?
I sent them to the farm.
Ironically, it says in Star Wars source books that they all become firefighters. So
Yeah, that's great. I actually have like a sad. I actually have like a sad theory. It's like, well, the Death Star needs people to build it. Let's get some flavor.
Yep.
We have
Yeah.
Wookiees. We
mean-
got clones. Bring in the
That's
clones
true.
now. Wookiees and clones.
I mean, wouldn't you just use the remaining clones? Like, just let them fight and be stormtroopers and sort of be weeded out. Like,
that's
what
what's
if-
seemingly happening.
That's what logic would say. But the Empire. When has the Empire been logical? They're getting rid of their best assets here. They're working on the cheap.
True.
Mm.
Tarkin, that guy knows how to save a buck. That's how he
Exactly.
how he got where he is.
That's how the Empire fell, because it was cheap.
Buy slippers, not
cheap.
boots.
We think it's because of a complicated plot within the Death Star that Galen Erso laid as a trap. No, I think it was just poorly.
No. If you just invested it a bit
Have you
more,
seen
if,
the
if
second
everything
Death
was
Star?
galvanized,
Yeah,
It'll be fine.
if we just waited a couple of weeks, the thing would have blown up on its own. We wouldn't have even needed Luke with his.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Oh, but talking about clones, I just want to go back to Crosshair again. And I'm sure you would have discussed a lot of his purpose just before I came into the show as well. But Crosshair.
That's actually what we were talking
am-
about.
Oh, really? Yeah, great. Yeah. So, like, I can't figure the guy out. I can't figure out his angle, what he's thinking. What are you thinking? He's like connected to them and is like, oh, I won't kill you right now, but I hate you, but and it's just like, wow, what is it? I really can't actually grasp what he's feeling or thinking. Because I feel like maybe I don't think he knows. I don't think he knows what he's feeling or
wouldn't be
thinking.
surprised.
Yeah.
Mm.
He
So-
seems like a guy in conflict. He seems like he's not really sure what to do. He put all of his eggs, I think, into this gambit, into this basket of trying to get the Bad Batch to join him. And now that hasn't worked, I think he's a little bit without purpose. And as we've talked about, like, he goes back to the Empire, and what? They're just like, oh, good to see you, buddy. Come on in. Let's go. We'll give you a new regiment.
oh.
It'll all be great. That's not really the Empire's style, unless, as we've just discussed, he figures out a way to save him a couple of bucks, in which case he'll be welcome back in. But if he tries that may not go well. So where does he go? What is his purpose? Maybe he gets let back into the Empire, but at some point, is he going to, as we said, see the light and realize the Empire's bad? Does he wind up becoming a mercenary of some kind? That doesn't really seem like his style. He seems like he needs a purpose. He needs someone to give him something to fight for. And I don't know who that is.
He saw Guerrero, ironically. Like, hey, who would be a cutthroat rebel? Like, the two of them could get along perfectly.
Yeah.
He had to get that old lady, like that early in the season. Crosshair was like cutthroat, yeah. It's a good point that you make about like Crosshair wanting purpose and wanting to have purpose, and like because I can't see him becoming like a bounty hunter or just a mercenary, just going willy-nilly without throughout the galaxy. But yeah, I'm not sure how he will be taken back into the Empire. I can see him like that actually could be a storyline. They could flesh out that journey of him trying to fit into the Empire. Because I found his stance when he was very like, oh, the Empire is good. And for him to not be in a chip to say that, even people like within the Empire go, oh, this is dreadful. Like this is a terribly run operation, unless you're a high ranking officer. That's a general consensus that the Empire is bad by any civilian. But for Crosshair to be like, oh no, they're doing great things. They're doing pretty well for themselves, and he says it so matter of fact, not like he's crazy. He says it just like, yeah, they're pretty good. I'm going to join them, which is, I haven't heard someone be so casual about the Empire. I think that's what it is. He was very casual about it. I'm like, this is an interesting take, but
yeah. The Empire's only been around for a little while. It hasn't even had a chance to like really cement
That's true.
itself.
That's true.
He's already like, yeah, it's a good place. We got good guys over there.
Right.
Yeah, you gotta meet K421. That guy's the best. He's got all the best jokes. One day he's gonna be
just
standing
so
guard.
casual.
It's just great.
I kind of like that though. I kind of like that. I kind of wish we see more of that as the show goes on. It's like the Empire's only like a few days, not a few days, probably a few months by now. It's like a few months old, and it's sort of like, we've had a war for like 3 years. That kind of a lot of weird stuff happened. We're tired. These guys seem to be knowing what they're doing. They're like, Palpatine seemed to have it all figured out. Finally, let's just go to bed.
Yeah,
let's go to bed.
Hey, you're speaking my language at 4:30 in the morning.
It's almost time to wake up, Dominic.
Oh my word!
I'm wondering, as the more we talk about it, if what the Bad Batch needs as a show for season 2 is perhaps a smaller scope. And I don't mean that from a character standpoint, but I mean that from like a universe standpoint. I feel like they need a planet or a couple of planets, a system to focus in on. And
that's why I like Resistance so much, because it had just that one station. And I think that's why that show, or at least for me, really worked, because it was like, here's the Colossus. It's one place. We build that community over time. Sure, we eventually start traveling, but we still have the Colossus as a place. So they're like, you're able to like really hone in on it. And I think I agree with you. It's like, I feel like, because again, these shows can't be the saga changers. They have to be almost small scale just by where they're placed on the timeline. Even Mandalorian, to a certain extent, has to do that too. Although I think Mandalorian's doing it a little bit better right now, because it seems like they're building something kind of big. Yeah. But I think maybe like Ord Mantell should be like the place, or
if there's like some kind of a crime war on Ord Mantell or something that gives the characters a very specific purpose, so that they're not just kind of wandering through space. Because I think if they're wandering through space, you run the risk of getting a little, having the show run a little bit stale. I think you give them a purpose, and that could bring Crosshair back into the mix. You have the Empire be involved in some way, you have the Underworld be involved in some way, but you also give us some new interesting factions, and all of a sudden you revamp the show in an exciting way, because the show, I still think the show has a lot of momentum carrying it into season 2, but you need to apply that to something good, something that kicks off in the premiere or the first couple of episodes, that makes it clear this is the trajectory we're on, this is the story we're telling now. Strap yourselves in, here we go.
Absolutely. And I don't know if this is an idea that maybe was previously discussed, but what about if we see a Bad Batch breakup completely? Yeah, Hunter, Wrecker, Echo, they all just, and not in like a real futile way, but it does just kind of fizzle out. The kind of Echo's like, oh, Hunter, you're not giving us direction. Wrecker's like, yeah, I just want to stay on this planet. And then they all kind of have their rational reason to be like, oh, let's just like lay low, but just kind of do our own thing and kind of have this slow breakup of the group. That's something I would be interested in seeing how that would work. I don't know how, like, if it would be like an episode per character of like what they were doing, but I think that could be definitely a direction that they could go in. Of it doesn't have to be like a massive argument and a breakup. It's like it will be a fizzle out and see what happens.
I have a prediction on that. I think if any of them were to leave, I think Echo goes. He joins either Rex or the Syndulas. Somebody of the rebellion, probably Rex, and maybe leave the other. Let's see, Wrecker and then Tech and Omega. The other three behind, like, you kind of be like, it's almost like the anti-Crosshair, where like Echo joins the rebellion, Crosshair's in the Empire, and then it's like Wrecker, Omega, Hunter, and Tech kind of left.
The other characters are caught in the middle of the whole thing.
Well, Wrecker would be too, because everybody would have a good point. So it's like, oh dang.
Yeah, Wrecker would just constantly just be bouncing between different people, going, "I think this is where I am for this week. This is fun."
Yeah,
I like that idea. I think that could be really interesting to break up the group midway through the season, and then reunite them for the finale, and then not even necessarily keep them together after that, but you could still split them off and see where they wind up, and have it be. Don't have Wrecker go all Adam Driver in Marriage Story and punch a hole in the wall, because that would be devastating. So second Marriage Story reference of the night.
Yeah, what?
Star Wars is becoming Marriage Story. What's happening?
That's Adam Driver, man. That guy just.
Oh man,
it's all a big part of the expanded.
It's all about Black Widow and Kylo Ren. That's all.
Ultimate crossover. Marvel, what if?
There you go. You know what? Respect to Disney if for just an episode they just replace an episode of What If with just Marriage Story. So everybody's expecting.
What if Kylo and Rey got married? That's what that would be about. What if?
And they do another episode where it's what if General Hux got married too, and it's that movie with Donald Gleason and the bunnies.
Oh yeah.
Which is pretty much Hux is domesticated.
Or what if Hux and Poe suddenly became best friends for a weekend with that involving droids and all sorts of Ex Machina. We're putting Ex Machina into.
Okay.
There we go.
Going. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I'm like, Finn's really jealous right now. That's all. Yeah.
Finn has a giant robot.
Finbo.
Pacific Rim 2.
There you go.
Oh, nice.
What if the Star Wars What If series is just a bunch of other movies starring the cast members?
I think that's the best direction.
Yeah. What else is Mark Hamill been in? What can we put?
Every Batman movie. What if Mark Hamill was the Emperor? Avatar: Last Airbender, pretty much.
There you go. What if Anakin Skywalker moved to Toronto and became a pizza man? That's Little Italy. That is a real movie that came out 2 years ago.
That's a niche, yeah. Niche.
I just want to see little Anakin with Arnold Schwarzenegger hunting for toys at Christmas.
Yes.
Oh my god, yes. Oh my god, yes.
Somebody should deep fake the Phantom Menace and replace Liam Neeson with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yes.
I mean, falls to the dark side, but it's dancing ballet.
There we go.
No, not to. I'm going to bring it back. I've got another idea. I've got an idea. Okay, cool. Great, cool. Anyway, Omega. Yes, Omega. The direction of where she's gonna go for this for season 2, I am really, really excited for her character to be exploring the idea of the Force and for it to be in all living things, but she has nothing to do with Jedi or Jediism or anything to do with that. To be a Jedi, but she explores what it means to be in touch with the Force. I think that's a really interesting concept that, obviously she's had these weird hints of understanding people's emotions really deeply and seeing what could happen just before they happen. So those are the basic elements of having Force feelings. So I'm interested to see where they go with that kind of storyline. And I was kind of surprised that wasn't really brought up again in this finale last week or this week. It wasn't really touched on again, apart from her kind of trying to be Hunter. It wasn't very direct of, she's got Force powers. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm interested to see.
The mystery surrounding Omega has kind of
Died down.
fizzled out. I'm gonna say
Yeah,
fizzled
yeah,
out.
that's what I'm
Yeah,
saying. It's
whatever
like,
happened to
it's like,
that?
what?
It was sort of like as soon as we found out that she was the Omega to Boba's Alpha, it was sort of like, all right, well, there you go. That's everything you need to know. But I feel like there's more going on there. And I still go back to the the second episode of the show when Cut LaQuaine said, the Kaminoans don't do anything without a purpose.
Yep.
And I feel like there's more to it than that. And I still am leaning in the same direction as you, Hannah, that there's something forcey going on here. There's her M count's a little high, or there's something going on there, whether it was an intentional creation by Nalase or an accidental one. Nalase really, she kept Omega very, very close. And, yeah, it's okay to protect the original source. Okay, that's one thing. But I feel like she may have recognized that there was more going on.
I mean,
and perhaps done some experimenting. And again, that leaves Omega with that real feeling of never wanting to go back to Kamino.
Right. I mean, they already know the Empire could really be doing the whole cloned Force Army thing, which could then tie into Book of Boba Fett. Mandoverse later. I'm just gonna say Mandoverse. I don't know what it's gonna be called.
Mandoverse.
I don't know what Thrawn's big. I don't know what Thrawn's big end game is gonna be like. So that's always possible too. Also we got Big Bro Boba out there somewhere. Something I've been thinking about though in terms of shaking up the show, and this is something that this can do that Rebels couldn't do and Resistance didn't do. Time jump. And they can time jump far. Like there is no boundary really outside of 20
That's a good
years.
point.
Rebels couldn't really time jump outside of a few months because A New Hope has to happen. Resistance can't do that because Force Awakens has to happen. And they show Force Awakens. Clone Wars couldn't time jump because, well, they kind of did, but they squeezed a whole bunch of stuff into 3 years. Civil War. That's a lot of stuff to happen in 3 years. And we live in our world. But this show can jump 4 years, and there's still plenty of time for these guys to be alive and Omega to be now a young lady, a young woman, who's maybe more of in command of the squad than the Hunter.
Yeah, the dark times it's a very long period, and we were talking about this on a previous show about how it's like, how are they going to have a happy ending to the show when the happy ending is so far away in the timeline? Like, there's not supposed to be anything happy happening until the Death Star gets blown up in New Hope. All that's supposed to be bad, and that's why with Rogue One everybody died, because you couldn't have a happy ending to that.
I have a theory about and how they can use the time jump. Okay, so you get the sad stuff early on, like maybe season 2, maybe season 3, depending on how long the show wants to go. You kill off Hunter. Hunter's the mentor character anyway.
Ooh.
And while this might sound cheap because you kind of want to see this with Omega, you time skip. You time skip big time. Omega is like when Hunter dies, Omega is still little Omega. Although she's the older sister. And then you time skip, and now Omega is a fully grown, clone, person. And she's now like, you can kind of tell, Omega's a little jaded now. She's leading the Bad Batch still. Who's ever alive, hopefully Wrecker. Because I want Wrecker to be protected at all costs. He's too precious. Exactly.
Is big man. Classic.
And then, sort of like, then you can kind of do more of an optimistic ending, because that would be more closer to the Rogue One-y Rebels area, where you kind of can get away more with like, okay, the hope's coming. It's not Luke yet, but the hope's coming. So maybe now we can get a little bit more hopeful compared to early on, where it's like, now bad things only have to happen because the Empire's just going to get worse from here.
Yeah.
That's kind of my have your cake and eat it too theory, but I could be wrong for all we know.
I think that could work out super, super well. And that's a very interesting theory. Joel, thank you so much for all of your feedback tonight. It's been great.
Welcome.
You always
Intriguing.
spur great discussions with your emails, and having you on to talk for a while has been awesome. But we actually have another caller.
Oh, yeah.
We have somebody else that we want to bring in. So we're going to let you go and say goodnight. Joel, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Joel.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh man, so many thoughts. Zero based has to come up. Come on. Come on.
Yes.
Has to
It's
come up.
happening. It's happening. Kareem,
Kareem.
Hello.
good morning.
Good morning. It's 4:51.
Yeah,
Oh wow.
it's,
You must have
it's
just
early
woken
for us.
up.
I didn't plan on staying up this late, but here I am.
What'd you think? What'd you think of the finale, Kareem?
Yeah, man. Very exciting. I've been watching your show, and I kind of agree. It was underwhelming, but in that way, it was also kind of refreshing to make it a smaller character study.
Mm.
And man, Crosshair, that ending.
Mm.
I'm really curious to know what is going to happen to Crosshair. He's just standing there on a platform, completely stranded.
Yeah.
Like, what's the immediate next 2 hours of his life going to be like?
That's an excellent question.
He's got to wait for that animal that Obi-Wan climbs onto. That he's got to wait for the giant thing. Yeah. He's
There's
got to wait
always
for
a
one of
bigger
those.
fish. As soon as I saw that, I didn't think Zillow Beast. I went to there's always a bigger fish.
Big fish, yeah.
Clearly, there's. There you go.
Yeah, so good.
Clearly, there's something wrong with me that I didn't think of the very famous Star Wars quote. I went to the
Right?
obscure.
Iconic underwater scene.
Yeah,
What?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
so
I
good.
think Crosshair's just calling for an Uber. There, he's pull out his comlink and open up the app and hope somebody comes and picks him up.
Yeah, man. Like, are there other clones on the run? Maybe some other clones had a little mini uprising, got off a ship somewhere.
Yeah. What if he fell in with we constantly think he's going to fall in with bad people? What if he fell in with like Hauser and his crew?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Maybe
How's
there's
kicking around?
there could be hope for Crosshair yet. We think we fell in with the wrong crowd once, so we keep thinking that's what he's going to do again. But I don't know. Maybe there's some good people out there that will give him some focus, which he can then use to get the Bad Batch to focus on.
Yeah.
Something bigger than just we need some money to keep our ship afloat. Which was so much of season 1.
Yeah, I think other
Yeah, it's
clones
just
will be
like we need the
sympathizing.
money. We need the money.
Yeah. Tell Sid I've got her money. Anyways, so Kareem, what are you most looking forward to in season 2? What are you hoping to see? What's on your wish list?
Yeah. Okay. More clone sympathizers. I think there's little drops of it. The way that one clone's voice was kind of hesitating when he's like, "Oh, all the cities have been destroyed." Pause. Kamino is sinking. Maybe I was reading into it, but I feel like there was some emotion there. And other clones. I hope that not all the cities are destroyed, and that there's one landing pad at least of some clone sympathizers. And speaking, someone Joel I think was here earlier. He was mentioning Paul Bettany's character Dryden Voss.
Yeah.
So I like Joel's ideas. Also, I like another Voss, Quinlan Voss, Jedi who's on the run.
Yes, let's go.
Oh yeah. Oh wow.
Like they've been keeping away from the Jedi stuff, which is really cool. This is the first big, I guess, Mandalorian also. So it's cool that there's Star Wars properties that are a few steps away from the Force stuff. But one episode, it'd be cool to meet a Jedi on the run who's in disguise, probably.
Yeah.
That's something we haven't really picked up on much this season with the Bad Batch, because we started with Order 66, which is a lot of Jedi dying all at once, and the Bad Batch were clearly very conflicted about this. They didn't quite understand what was going on, and we saw there's that great conversation between Hunter and Kanan. But what would another clone Jedi conversation look like? What would a conversation between Hunter and Kanan or somebody else, Quinlan, what would that look like now that we're all these months removed from Order 66 and everybody's had a chance to process it a little bit? In Rebels, right, when Kanan shows up at Rex and Gregor and Wolf's front door, Wolf is immediately thinking, oh, the Jedi are here for revenge, and he grabs his blaster and starts shooting.
Yeah,
we could see some of that. Maybe we could see a Jedi that wants some vengeance, is out for blood now.
Hunting clones.
maybe that's Quinlan, maybe it's not. Now that he's done his whole dark side thing in Dark Disciple, I don't know. But I think we're due for another Jedi appearance. They've gone a while without returning to that, and that feels just rife with drama for the show, rife with opportunities for devastating interaction between the two sides, both sides that I think Order 66 is a trauma for both sides. Obviously worse for the side that was nearly wiped out, but clearly it was a difficult experience for the clones, especially the ones that get their chips removed and understand what they did. So let's see them. Let's put them in a city that's being destroyed and make them talk for an episode and see what happens. Just repeat the formula of this episode and see where we wind up.
What if yeah. What we could come across a very injured and half alive Mace Windu in season 2. Bad Batch being like, oh, hello. He's in a dark room and he's got like his arms and his legs are like metal and he's like half Darth Maul now. But I think that could, and everyone's always talked about that. That's always been out there theory. But it's getting more realistic that like that could actually be a storyline and be a character we see.
I have always maintained that Boba Fett needs to be the one to kill Mace Windu. He needs vengeance for the death of his father. And, Mace Windu is just going to show up randomly and everybody's going to be like, I thought you were dead. What? And he's going to be like, say what one more time? And then you're off to the races.
Do they speak English in what?
Yeah. And that would be actually a good connection for Boba then to be involved, like what we mentioned before, like Boba and Omega being connected in such a deep way, which we didn't really unpack. It was just like, oh yeah, they're like the same. Oh, that's it. So that would be like an interesting character connection there. But if Boba comes into season 2 and Mace, very interesting.
What I want to happen, if this is the way they're going, is I want a big dramatic entrance for Mace Windu where he, steps out of the fog and you see his purple lightsaber there and the camera slowly pans up from his feet to reveal his face and he's standing there. He looks dramatic. He gets one badass Sam Jackson line in. And then you just hear from off screen, pew, and then he falls face forward and standing behind him is Boba Fett. And it's like, you thought this was a Mace Windu episode. No. It's a Boba Fett episode.
Nice.
Let's go.
So
just 1,000%. That's going to be the premiere. Come on, season 2, first episode.
Wow.
Let's do it.
Rewrite whatever you had. This is better.
Yeah, that's how it's got to be.
Yeah, Boba doesn't say anything. He just nods. And then we get the title card. It's the cold open.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Cold open. Love it. Yeah. I think we could see Mace. I think that could be a possibility.
It's one of those things that a few years ago I thought, no, never, won't happen. But as Sam Jackson keeps talking about it and more people hear him talk about it, it feels like it's more and more of a possibility. And I feel like if that's going to happen, you have to actually bring back Sam Jackson.
Yeah.
It can't be a cartoon. It has to be live action Mace Windu. Otherwise, I feel like you'll never hear the end of it from Sam Jackson. But it went from something that not a lot of people talked about. There was a theory that was out there, but not a lot of people talked about. And then everybody thought he was Snoke. There was a weekend there where the Snoke theory du jour was Mace Windu. I believe it was the weekend that Rogue One came out, because I remember we were down trying to sneak into the premiere and the security guard was checking my bag and I had a "Your Snoke Theory Sucks" sticker on it, and he goes to me, he's like, "What's a Snoke?" And I'm like, I start describing Snoke, and he goes, "Oh yeah, I heard he was Mace Windu." And I'm like, like, this is why we got the sticker.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, it's gone from now. It had its Snoke Theory weekend, and now here we are. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen in
Andor.
Oh yeah.
Big time.
No.
Sam Jackson's Instagram has been really active with Mace Windu type stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
He posts a lot of T-shirts,
Oh.
and he posted a lot of Mace Windu stuff right around the time that Book of Boba Fett was filming.
Oh.
Right
Interesting.
when Tamora Morrison
Ooh.
was saying stuff.
Yeah.
So I mean, the conspiracy theorists love that. But
Oh my
Yeah.
god.
Sam Jackson was posting a lot of Mace Windu stuff when he's got other material to promote, other
Yeah.
properties to promote. But he's been putting Mace Windu stuff while Book of Boba Fett was being
Interesting.
tweeted by
This
Tamora
is a
Morrison.
deep cut. I love it.
So Book of Boba Fett put in
Yeah.
live action.
Yeah. I feel like he saw Ewan McGregor spend all those years answering questions about the Obi-Wan movie and was like, well, it worked for him. I'm just gonna get the ball rolling on my own.
Windu.
Just years of campaigning.
Oh, incredible.
It's wild. The day that happens, I'm sure it will just be bonkers. The reaction videos are going to be insane. It won't just be people going like this in thumbnails. It'll be like actually people's heads exploding.
Like just combusting. Yeah, completely.
But that's gotta have its own space because that'll overshadow anything else.
Yeah.
A bit like Luke at the end of the last episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Going back to Bad Batch, though, that was a good tangent, though. I like that. The Windu show. What's your stance on what do you think Omega's deal is, Kareem? I want to know your take on, do you think she has force powers? Do you think we're going to see more of that? What do you think her kind of difference is or the thing that makes her an interesting clone?
Great question. I did think at the beginning she might be force sensitive, but I don't think that's the case. I haven't seen any on-screen hints at force sensitivity. It could develop later. That would be cool. The only evidence-based judgment I can make is that she's aging slower. That's seems to be the only thing. But I think she should have some sort of edge or unique ability. I really have no idea. Force sensitivity would be cool, or maybe a different type of force sensitivity, like animal type connection, or maybe she'll have dreams or visions. Maybe it'll kick in after puberty. I don't know.
Yeah, she seems to represent like the conscience of the Bad Batch, and I think to an extent she represents that even for Crosshair, and I think that could certainly be a result of force sensitivity in some ways, or it might be, as was revealed in this episode, just that she's older than them and she can read them, and she spent her whole life around clones and she knows how to read clones, and she feels this special connection to the Bad Batch, and so maybe she really thinks she can understand them. I don't know. Like I said earlier, I'm still kind of leaning towards the Force camp, which sounds like a great place to go in the summer.
The Force camp.
I'll go to Force camp next year.
Yeah.
Willing participants only.
Yeah.
Actually, I think that's what the podcast is.
Force camps.
But what was I saying? But I feel like that's sort of her version of force sensitivity, the way Ezra was really connected to Lothal as a planet and to animals specifically. I feel like that's her thing, her focus of her force.
Yeah, I'm thinking like, we never really saw the perfect copy of Jango Fett, because Boba is such a flawed character. I mean, losing his father figure, definitely took a lot away from his potential and who he could be. And so with Omega, we have an example of seeing, another perhaps better version of Jango Fett, of being another pure clone of his. And without that trauma from the past, she might become much more formidable than Boba ever could have been. And so I think seeing what she'll grow into when she comes into her own, it is very interesting, because you're seeing both a good version of Jango and Boba, but also like one that is not potentially as flawed.
Yeah.
Interesting. And that's really interesting take because from what I understand of like Django's backstory, like it's not like he's a saint. It's not like he's like a fantastic guy. We got to clone this guy. He's amazing. Like he's just kind of like, it was a job and he just like took the job. He's like, oh, I got this bunny. If you want some like a blood test, that's fine. Yes. Like it's interesting. Yeah.
If all that was needed for somebody to pay you billions of dollars was for them to take
you would do it.
A couple of strands of your hair. Yeah, go for it.
Sure.
You want a fingernail? There you go. Enjoy.
Yeah. They probably could have got his DNA sample without his consent or him even knowing.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, yeah, that's actually a really good point.
Lama Su just sort of sneaks up behind him with some scissors and just drops off
like a little baggie.
and he's like, hey, what happened there? And Lama Su's like, nothing. I'm just going to go over there now.
The Empire's always so now I'm curious, why did the Empire even keep Jango alive? They're usually very thorough, tying up their loose ends.
I feel like the Kaminoans kept him alive because they wanted more sample from him. They wanted to get a little bit more.
I think like we keep him here. Like that's what's going on there.
That's true. Yeah, like he is an experiment, as a science project. Yeah,
just like Grogu. Same reason why Grogu is kept.
That's true.
They did that live specimen. Kareem, thank you so much for staying up all night to talk with us. This has been absolutely fantastic. We're gonna let you get to sleep. We've got another caller that has been waiting patiently to get in. But it was great talking to you.
Likewise,
thank
Chris,
you, Kareem.
Dominic,
appreciate
Anna.
it.
Yeah. See you next week, Kareem.
Thank you,
everybody. Bye.
See ya.
Oh,
We've got another caller, Dominic.
Yeah. There you go. Good morning, Jeff.
Good morning. How's it going, everybody?
Very good.
Somehow we're still here. Somehow. Not entirely sure how, but we're still here. What did you think of the finale, Jeff?
Oh, I thought it was a great finale. And kind of put it in context with that first episode, it would have been real nice to put them both together. But I thought it was a great finale. I really like how it's, kind of a side story. It's not so much playing into some massive galactic save the world kind of thing. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Small stories, small stakes, but big personal ones that you need that.
Exactly.
At the end of the day, you throw a ton of explosions into something and you do all the special effects and you make it look really cool. But if you don't have that personal story at the core, then you're watching basically like a museum exhibit of just like, oh, look what we can do with the computer these days. Which I think is just what the Transformers movies are. Whereas Star Wars needs to maintain its character core. At the end of the day, the Death Star blowing up is satisfying, not just because that was an incredible effect for 1977, but because we've just been on that journey with Luke Skywalker and we've seen what it means for him to actually be the one to make that shot. So yeah, and now that as we've said a couple of times, now that we've had this finale and we've seen this story, it opens up the door for more spectacle that feels more impactful for the characters now that we've spent all of this time with them and have really understood what makes them tick.
Yeah, I love that they're Outriders too. I love the Outrider stories. These guys, trying to find their place now after all of this change, and there's so much that they can do coming up in the next season. I'm really excited for it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good point.
Also got to say, I'm really excited to see a Star Wars Underworld YouTube channel with seeing you guys going live.
Yeah.
I've been a listener for probably about 5 years. Big fan.
Oh,
So super pumped to see you on here, Hannah. I've been enjoying watching you on the Culture Slate and the Star Wars
Oh,
Culture
yay. Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
channel. Welcome. I'm a big fan
I'm just here for the party.
of all you guys, and yeah.
Oh.
This is awesome. It's cool to be able to interact with y'all, and
well,
keep
thank
doing
well,
what you're doing. Y'all are great.
well, thank you so much. That's awesome. And thank you for being here and for being on with us for this. And yeah, it is about time that we started actually showing our faces while we record the show. What was your standout moment in the episode, Jeff? Like if there's a highlight for you where you went, yes, this is it, A+.
I gotta say, it's probably Omega reaching out to Crosshair, and she believing in him when the other guys are kind of, I wouldn't say they're not believing in him, but she's got that heart there. I don't know if it's because she was there since these guys were born, but yeah, that really stood out to me. Loved it.
Yeah, Omega's been like the breakout star of this show. Like it's incredible to me every time they pull this off with one of these characters that just it took what was going to be a sort of a fun macho action show and gave it a real grounding, a real core, a real heart. And Omega's it's been incredible to watch this character over the course of this season, even if we don't, as that comment that just flew up on the screen said, know what her mutation is yet. Although I don't know, I feel like it was sort of implied in this episode that she doesn't really have one. Like I feel like the way
wait, are we doing this again? Are we doing the Raising Nobody? Omega has no mutation. Omega has no powers. She's who she is. She's her own person.
I mean, let's just run it all back.
You're a Skywalker. No, you're a Palpatine, Omega. That's where this is where the show's gonna end. And we're gonna find out she's actually a clone of Palpatine.
Oh no, that would be. Oh no.
Not again.
You got the hair.
There's some plays you don't have to run a second time.
But
don't worry,
yes,
she's gonna get adopted into the Skywalkers. Omega Skywalker.
Omega.
That's my name.
I'm a Skywalker. Oh, too good. But yes, with Omega's connection, like I like what you mentioned there, Jeff, of the connection in this episode when she's reaching out to Crosshair, trying to get through to him. One of my favorite moments of like the whole season would have been the second or third episode, and they're in jail all together in that holding cell on Camino, and she sits down next to Crosshair and she says, "You're mad, aren't you? Like, or like you're angry. You feel angry, don't you?" And tries to like get on his level and talk about, hey, you're feeling this emotion, you're experiencing this. Like, let's talk about it. Like, it's a very mature thing to do, but yeah, it's that beautiful moment of she's trying to connect with him and he is so reluctant to. And it's interesting that that didn't really develop. It didn't get better through the season. Like, it's still her trying to reach out, and that beautiful line. And she's just like, "I know you're different, but like you're still their brother, and you're still my brother." I was like, "Oh no!" Right at the end of that episode when she says that was really a beautiful moment. I found.
Just twisting the knife.
Like, oh yes, you are brothers. Oh.
Yeah, I loved that in this episode they sort of went back to that moment where Crosshair's sitting by himself and Omega comes up and sits down next to him. And I thought it was really interesting that she basically, instead of trying to reach out to him the way she did the first time and knowing that didn't work on him, she kind of just sort of says to him like, yeah, maybe you are evil. Screw you. I'm leaving. I'm going over there. And I feel like that actually got through to him. I feel like that sort of like, no, there's even this character who can see the good in everybody and is the embodiment of hope on this show is like, nah, you're hopeless. And I feel like that might have actually been the thing that got through to him, made him realize, oh, okay, maybe I shouldn't, or maybe I can help. I can get us out of this pickle that we're in. And
pickle.
Yeah.
Pickle. That's the best, most momentous word.
Yeah, it's a pickle. That's
It's a pickle.
yeah, that's what they. I mean, the episode was called "Escape from Pickles."
Oh.
So,
Yeah, to make sense. Oh my gosh.
Pickle
but,
Lost. It was called Pickle Lost.
Pickle
We lost all
yeah.
our pickles.
Pickle
at the
Lost.
bottom of the
I mean,
ocean.
the show is called The Pickle Batch, right, guys? That's what it's
Who
called.
lives in a
Oh,
pickle under the
no.
sea?
Oh no!
Make it square
Stop. Stop.
Um,
Oh no!
but
Oh.
I think she did. She got through to him in that moment with that sort of like, I'm not going to try to help you. I'm not going to try and convince you to do the right thing. You're on your own. And from that moment on, he wasn't necessarily helpful, but he wasn't getting in their way. And then at the end of the episode, he does come through for them. He does save her in the end. And even before that, right? He's the one that figures out that AZ can push the glass coffins up to the top and avoid the falling debris. So he right away after that interaction, he actually starts being a productive member of the group again.
Yeah, absolutely, and it just shows that deeper connection that we love to see in Star Wars. That it's just about connecting and understanding someone to make them feel understood about something, and then that can do wonders, and that can move a lot of people to do things. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's another just sort of like
Just
bit of
because I
maturity.
understand him doesn't mean I don't agree. Doesn't mean I agree with
Oh
him.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
There you
yes.
go.
Yeah. Classic. The
Um,
classic.
Yeah, but I think it's also just, it shows again Omega's maturity that she realizes that you have to communicate with different people in different ways. Like different people respond to different things, and Hunter might react well to you're a good guy, we're on the same side here, let's work this out. But as we saw earlier in the episode, Crosshair does not. He needs something more abrasive, something that's less lovey-dovey, feel-goody, all that sort of thing, and something that's a little bit colder, because that's the language that he speaks. And again, that shows the difference between Omega and Tech, because Tech understands Crosshair, but he doesn't actually know how to get through to him, whereas, as we see, Omega does.
Absolutely. The thing with the Bad Batch I like is that I feel like all their characteristics and all their traits, if it was all in one person, it would make this, superhuman conglomerate of a fantastic person and like the hero. But it's all in parts of them. Like they all have really good strengths that perfectly complement each other, and that if it was all in one clone, it would be like that would be the perfect clone kind of thing. But it's all split up into these different ways and different ways of expressing themselves through these different clones, which is it's an interesting, because the whole conversation of their mutations, and it's like it's their defects, but they're defects of what makes them unique and what makes them special and powerful and have all these interesting aspects is apparently a bad thing. I like how they call that a defect, but it's actually their best trait that they use.
They're actually the best batch. That's what
best
season 2's gonna be called.
Yeah.
Oh, the best batch. That is phenomenal. Jeff, I have a question for you. If you could pick any cameo to come up in season 2, who would you want to see in season 2?
Oh, that's such a tough one. I mean, I'm kind of leaning on the Jedi side. I'd kind of like to see a Jedi come in here, because it seems like these guys are kind of interacting with just about all the different factions of people in the universe now that the Empire's taken over. And I think Ahsoka's probably the logical choice there. But I think Quinlan Voss, I think that would be a great meetup in the second season too. But I think it's their turn to interact with a Jedi.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Who would be the most off the board Jedi that they could come up with? Like, we're all thinking Ahsoka, and then there's a case to be made for Quinlan Voss. Who's like out there that we're not thinking of that could be?
Did we ever see Yariel Poof die?
No, he's still
because
serving soup somewhere.
Well, he's still out there getting pizza, and
Yeah.
and then serving soup. That would be interesting. They've put so many of the like council members in the animated shows. It's kind of shocking that Ariel Poof has not been put into an animated form.
Yeah. Seems wrong. Seems wrong. He should be should be there right away. He should be first should have been the first call.
Yeah, what's going on with that? I mean, even Depa Baliba has this huge story now with Kanan.
Yeah. Yeah. Where's Ariel Poof's moment? When is his moment gonna be? I've been waiting. It's been however many years since Robot Chicken 3. He's got
so much Plo Koon. We got some Sassy Tin in there. All of them, but yeah, no Ariel Poof. What's going on?
Hasn't made the cut. Doesn't.
He's at least in the top 12 most powerful Jedi. At least top 12. Come on.
Actually, that's true. He's up there. What if we see Yoda doesn't go straight to Dagobah?
Ooh.
And he's just hanging around. Stop somewhere. He's got to stop off for some ingredients for his soup that he likes to make.
Yeah.
No? I mean, I don't think that would happen, but you never know.
You never know.
We bet that could get Yariel and Yoda together.
Yeah.
So that's perfect.
Yeah.
They can each wear a different mustache. It'll be great.
Good disguise.
Yeah, Yoda's going to need to disguise himself. So he's going to need a mustache.
A top hat and a mustache. That's what I want to say.
And a cane and yes.
Yoda, I am not.
Oh no.
I'm rich dude, I am.
I'm way too long.
Some rich dude I am on my way to buy supplies for soup. That's how Yoda disguises himself, as if he speaks normally.
Oh yeah. He's going for soup.
And those supplies for soup last many, many years and serves it to Luke. And Luke tastes
shelf hardy
10, 15-year fermentation. Like
oh no.
It's very pungent soup.
Oh wow.
Aged soup.
Wow.
But 800
what a rabbit
years
hole
old,
this
your
has
soup
been.
tastes as good. It will not.
Oh no.
There it is.
Phenomenal.
Sorry. I don't know where there is to go from that.
I know. We're in a hole now of Yoda's soup making. I don't know how we got here, but
this is becoming a bit of a blue shadow of our stream.
Yeah. Something like that. I mean, I just want to point out it's 5:24. This is we've passed staying up time. We're now in getting up time.
Well, we're just peaked in viewers. Everybody's woken up and they're ready to go. They've just had a nice, beautiful night of sleep, and they're like, "All right, I'm gonna watch the Bad Batch now and be a good, responsible human being, and then go to work." They're all tuning in while they're eating breakfast.
Yeah, they're like, "What are they?" They're like, "I wanted a discussion about the Bad Batch. Why are they talking about
Yoda's soup?"
Like, boy, they watched a very different episode to me. Like, mime them eating cereal.
Yeah, that's like, wow, you're really going in there too.
I'm a method actor. Once I get into character, there's no getting out of it. And right now, I'm playing the role of a Star Wars fan eating breakfast.
Let's reel it back to Bad Batch. Let's reel it back here. I think you guys are too tired because it's only 7 p.m. where I am, so I am still sane.
That's why we brought you on, so someone could actually think.
Keep it rolling here. All right, Bad Batch. I agree with you, Jeff. I would be ecstatic to see some Jedi pop up in season 2. Ahsoka being like the kind of the feel good right direction, but will she come maybe pop up like maybe season 2 season finale perhaps? But definitely would like to see a Jedi in this Bad Batch series more.
Yeah,
I mean we could see Kanan. We could see a young Kanan pop up again.
Bring Kanan back. Yeah,
he's running around. He's still scared.
What about?
Yeah.
We saw in Rebels what became of Luminara and Dooley? What if Crosshair's the one to catch him?
Oh, I love that.
Ooh.
That's nuts.
There you go. Just go.
In the fridge. She dies
Yeah.
in the fridge. Yeah. That's
She was
the way
lured
to
in.
go.
She was lured in by some
Oof.
of Yoda's root leaf stuff.
No, I was about to say, don't bring up the soup again.
I
Don't do
had
it.
the restraint to not say that. I was going to, and then I'm like, no,
Don't bring up the soup,
not going
Dom.
back
Come
there.
on. Come on. And just got you out of that hole. Anyway, but you know,
Still half buried
you
in the
know,
soup.
she's yeah. So she was like around. She didn't. I'm assuming she didn't immediately die in the aftermath of 66. Then,
Yeah.
So
No.
you know, how did she end up? You know, in Rebels in that that. I'm going to call it a fridge. It looks like a fridge with a window in it.
Yeah.
What happened to? I'm sure. You know, we know Obi-Wan and we know Yoda, but it's like I'm sure there was a bunch of Jedi that weren't in the temple and they weren't directly with their squad of clones that were around and that would have heard what had happened and gone into hiding, but still figuring out where to go. And maybe even Jedis we haven't even heard of before. That could be a window for them to come in. Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
What's interesting about that is like when you look at all the dark times media that existed before Disney took over, you had this Jedi purge era. And that was how they dealt with the fact that all these Jedi still existed, is all these comic books where just Darth Vader came and just hunted down the Jedi and slaughtered them. And that was the stories. And so like perhaps with the Bad Batch, they're trying to kind of lighten it up a little bit. And it's perhaps them meeting up for some type of adventure, being part of saving the galaxy, or maybe just saving someone else, and then kind of like going out to some planet somewhere and fishing for some giant monster like the clones that we see in Rebels.
Yeah. There we go. Again, bringing it all back to food with the, going after the
That's all you're thinking. I think you need to eat breakfast.
Yeah. Do you need like? Would you want soup? I don't know. Let's go. What? Oh no! Oh no!
Oh man!
Oh, Lord.
Good stuff. Good stuff. I genuinely, I think I've run out of things to say about the episode.
I think we just hit 2 hours. That's a good. That's a lot longer than the 30 minutes we were planning to do.
Yeah.
And that's a huge thanks to everybody watching live, and the fact that people haven't stopped watching, which is great. So thanks everybody for continuing to watch the show, support the show. For a lot of you, this is the first time you're seeing us on video. We did a stream earlier tonight for our general audio live listening audience. That is public now, so you can go back and catch up on the latest news episode that we did of the Star Wars Underworld on our YouTube channel. YouTube does this thing where if we stream live, sometimes you need to go over to like the live stream section of the page to see things initially. So if you're not seeing any of our new content, go hit the live streams tab, and you'll be able to see. Go back and watch any of this episode that you've missed, as well as the previous episode and any future episodes that we do. We're planning to live stream every week on Thursdays at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 p.m. Pacific. So definitely stop by and talk the latest breaking Star Wars news with us. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please give this video a thumbs up. Please hit that notification bell, and please check out our Patreon for more YouTube content. We've got exclusive bonus content just going up there where we talk about stuff other than Star Wars. We've got a new bonus episode where we give a quick review, spoiler-free, of the Suicide Squad. You get to see us setting up our first live show and getting everything going.
Is that what we talked about? I don't remember.
That's what happened. That's what happened yesterday.
Oh
now.
Oh,
so you can find that at patreon.com/theswu. Check it out. So Jeff, thank you so much for calling in. It's great being able to talk with you and see you.
Yeah, great chat.
We'll see you.
Yeah,
And,
great chat. Great chat.
You know,
Oh, okay.
give you
Thank you,
the
Jeff.
hook
Thank you,
there.
Jeff, though.
That was
Yeah.
like,
Was that Chris? Was that Chris? Oh no.
Yeah,
that was
terrible
me.
time.
That was me.
We got great chat in. Thank you, Jeff. Oh,
Yes,
I think
wow.
I think it was lagging a little bit for me, so I don't even know what happened. I
Oh,
I had him say
no.
thank you, and then
That was wild.
I
I
hung
should
up.
have been in charge of the buttons by now.
yeah.
Oh no.
I'm taking over because
Oh, my word.
Dominic has lost control of his limbs.
He just wants that soup. He can't stop thinking about the soup.
Soup.
Oh my word.
But yeah, thank you,
You know
Jeff.
what the
Thank you
worst
so
part
much.
of that is? I don't even like soup. Soup's
You
like
don't- like any
overrated.
soup? You don't like any soup?
There's a couple that I don't mind. There's a good
Okay.
beef and barley soup is a quality.
Oh,
quality
well, that's that's a bit
It's good.
underwhelming.
Yeah.
That's right. And
Anyway.
I'm trying to outro us out.
Sorry,
We can
yeah,
end
we
the
get on a
stream.
tangent of soup.
No, we're fine.
Sorry.
I'm just trying to outro out. So we can end before either me or Dominic falls over because it's gonna happen.
Die. Oh no.
We're dying. So Hannah, thank you so much for hosting and providing your
Thank you so much.
evening energy, I guess.
Yeah.
Early
No,
evening
it's
energy
been a pleasure.
to the show.
Oh, it's always a good time talking with you guys. Always a pleasure.
And let everybody know where they can check out Star Wars culture and where they can check out you on social media.
Yeah, you can check out Star Wars Culture at Star Wars Culture on YouTube. We go live every, I don't know the American time. That's terrible. 7 p.m.
4.
Pacific on a Wednesday. 4 p.m. Pacific on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
And that's 9 a.m. Eastern in Australia. Check out, Star Wars Culture on YouTube and subscribe to that for more fun Star Wars content. You can find all our stuff at SW Culture Pod on Twitter and Instagram, and you can find me, how it's spelled on the screen, at Hannah Raeside on Twitter and Instagram too. I make really interesting Star Wars tweets if you want to have your thought provoked with Star Wars style. So that's where you can find me.
Awesome.
Follow.
Of course, you can find me at Seek3PO, and you can find Dominic at Dominic J25.
Oh no, we need to stop this.
Yeah, I'll tell you this. This is where my brain is at right now. When we do all of our promotion, we say at the SWU, and sometimes we say that too fast, and so it comes out as at the SW. And so as you were promoting Star Wars culture and you said SW culture, I was like, wait, SWU culture? No,
no.
No, that's correct.
One W.
SW culture. Oh no.
I'm broken.
We're gonna.
Gotta go get that soup.
That's yes. Gotta get that. So yeah, that's all the plugs. That's all the outros. We're gonna shut this thing down before it becomes alive.
It explodes before it explodes on us.
Thanks everybody for watching. We'll be back with more Bad Batch coverage, more Star Wars coverage on this channel in the very near future. For Dominic, for Hannah, my name is Chris, and may the Force be with you.
It's a wrap.